My name is Margaret Ann Windsor, and that's my real name. I have to use the name Peggy Ann Dempsey. I married a Childers. I was kidnapped in 41 at age 2 and brought to Moulton, Alabama. My identity stolen. I was given the name of Peggy Ann Dempsey, a twin, when in reality both twins they'd been murdered by their mother. They were born out of wedlock, and this was really a horrific crime scene there. It was horrible. It was a pigsty, but the abuse and treatment that went on there to me over the years was really awful. I found out in late 83 about my kidnapping after I'd written a book about mind control murders, programming people, and I had worked for doctors, by the way. I'm just going to show this because, as way of reference, because this is Lina Dempsey, the mother of the twins, and the one that they told me was my mother. She was a psychopath, and it was awful what she did. This is me in that family, and this is staged. They didn't have cars, and they don't show the house, and their clothes weren't that way. So anyway, that's that family, and they were awful. Maybe there's a couple of them wasn't, but the rest of them were horrible. This is my dad, Edward the Eighth. My dad married Claudia Ruth O'Keefe from Madison, Wisconsin, a school teacher, sister to artist Georgia O'Keefe. My dad never married Wallace Simpson. An imposter was used to take down my dad and become the illegal title of Duke and Duchess of Windsor. And all the crimes committed, the horrible things he did in Bermuda, etc., were attributed to my father when it wasn't my father at all. My father was still alive in 72. Well, he was still alive, and so was my mom. In October the 20th, when I came to Roanoke of 86. Now, the double died in 72 and was buried at Frogmore. So you could dig him up, but find his DNA and who he really is. But then the point is that the Brits told me, I know who I am. It's a fact of whether they can bring me home. And Elizabeth, I'd put away her picture, I guess. She's lived a happy life off of the theft, and she's illegal, and her father had kidnapped me, George VI, illegal, with the Rothschilds, Bilderbergers, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Kennedy clan, Joe, JFK. Joe was ambassador, and they showed the Roosevelt Hotel up there. Somebody sent me a video, and I looked at it. It was really a good one, but it was telling some things I have, and they said, we're talking about the Illuminati and the Jews, the Freemasons, and that they had done it in plain sight. What they did to me has been done in plain sight. But you look up there, Rosa, if you look at the young man from Great Britain on the late night, I'm British, by the way, I'm Victoria II, is okay, Margaret Ann Windsor is my real name, but if you look through the windows, it has the Roosevelt Hotel behind them, and it's on some more things, and I just saw it flip up there. But the Rockefeller Plaza is all over New York where the media is, and it's controlled. I don't know about the Fox. They don't tell all the truth either. Obviously, they haven't told about me and the lies about my dad and all that happened. Now I'm going to get to this, or I'm going to use up my time. This is Jack Hartsfield, and he is I think his nephew, I know he's related closely, was Hank Hartsfield, the astronaut. He was commander of a couple of the shuttles, the missions. He's deceased now. He was born in Alabama. And I met Jack, and when I had done the mind control murders, the book on it, Larry Flint was shot in March of 78 while I was doing the book. He was shot in Lawrenceville, Georgia, and I lived in Marietta, about 60 miles away, I think. Anyway, Hustler, I was in a campaign, and that's an endorsement. And Hustler, it was a endorsement in April of '84. And it was a nice one. He said he knew that I knew who was responsible for his shooting and killing of his attorney in Lawrenceville back then. Now I want to go to this. This is Jack, and I just put up one video, and it's part of the letters. And by the way, over the years, most of his letters have disappeared, I find. But let me finish the first one. He was FBI and undercover FBI, and he worked as a reporter. He worked for the Huntsville Times when I met him in after they put antifreeze in me in April Fool Day of '80. Had a letter from the FBI June the 23rd of 79, excuse me. I thought it was because of the book, and part of it may have been, but most of what was going on with me, like Henry Kissinger, was on the Watergate tapes and the 18-minute gap that was subpoenaed. And they role-played this at the DA's office, Fred Simpson in Huntsville, after the antifreeze had been put in me in '80. Now, this is back in about '72. Victor Gonzalez, a doctor who is still in practice in Atlanta, I believe, was working or interning when John Kennedy was killed. Now, John Kennedy helped kidnap me, he and his dad, the Freemasons. Okay, he was at Redstone Arsenal, the Army hospital, or hospital there, in, I don't know, '62 or about that time. And then he moves to Atlanta, and then my husband, in essence, turned me over to this horrific, horrible man, and he's the one that drugged me in about '72. In coffee that I drank, handed a cup of coffee, took me across to College Park, and I put all this up. And this is where Henry Kissinger was demanding certain ransom be made, or else they'll lobotomize me. Now I've put this up. Now that's your Henry Kissinger. He was Secretary of State and Defense under Nixon, and I want to say this. He was filmed, I had an article written, a picture of him when Diana was giving away her clothes. Let me remind you, this is my money that they spent, and I am going to pull this picture out real quick. This woman's lived my life. I'd like to be able to at least help the people that helped me, the Brits, the citizens who have been deprived, and look at our country now. Can you believe this woman is, people love her, she's renowned, she's a war criminal. It's not even hers. Her father helped in my kidnapping, and she's kept it up. Anyway, Diana, the money she spent on the gowns was mine, and she was giving them away. And I remember John Travolta, who I liked very much. I remember she was dancing with him up there in D.C., and Henry Kissinger, I had that picture, I wish I still had it, was with her and was shaking her hand and was holding her close and saying, well, I think that you should be queen. This is a bunch of cold-blooded killers that stole it all and gave my country away, and look what they did to my father. I hope the world sees what they did to my children and me. Now then, I want to finish this by Jack. It was the last part of the first letter I just put up. It would not be out of the question that while participating Masons go through the motions of their rituals, even they may not fully understand the magnitude of those same rituals. Just thought you'd enjoy this as food for thought. It takes away some of the away from Christianity, but it could also give enlightenment. In the darkest moments of these days in Huntsville for me, an acquaintance, now deceased, came to me with a portrait of a wistful young woman alone in a bluff with a backdrop of crumbling columnar, I can't even talk, relics off in the mist. Now, I saw this when I stopped by. He was in Albuquerque, and that's not far from my Aunt Georgia's ranch out there, Ghost Ranch in Albuquerque. And that's when I was finding out about my real name. This is after the antifreeze. This is in 1984, March. young woman. So I saw this picture there, and later he's writing me back about it. Because I asked him about it. There was something in the glint of the young woman's eyes that seemed all-knowing and sad. I remember I cried when I looked at it. My late acquaintances, I know he had intelligence agency connections, wanted me to have it to hang in my small apartment where I was living alone after my wife Sheila and I divorced. The painting was entitled Broken Silence, and Broken Silence was something I was pushing so hard to achieve, and at the time had no religious significance to me at all. That would come later, much later. Long after I had left Huntsville, I was studying the painting. The artist had inscribed the name on the painting. I did a computer search to discover it was a pseudonym, not a real person at all. But a further search revealed the true name of the artist, a Freemason born and reared in Alabama and deceased for more than 20 years. I still have that painting to this day. Well, I knew that, but he's just kind of, Jack knew what was going on, and you could trust him. He's one of the, I hope that doesn't miss us up and doesn't go up. Anyway, but a further search revealed the true name of the artist, a Freemason born and reared in Alabama and deceased for 20 years. I still have that painting to this day. I don't think I ever told you, but the day after Mayor Joe Davis was defeated at the polls for another term in office, this is in Huntsville, Alabama, space program and all that, I had quietly come to Huntsville on one of my very infrequent visits, sitting in the office with him looking out over the city that I had loved so much at one time. You do know, Jack, that Sal Vizzini, the police chief, by the way, he was ex-FBI and sent there and helped save my life in 1980, okay? Was maybe the best thing to ever happen to Huntsville, Joe said. Mr. Mayor, I think you're right, I replied. Joe and I both know the depths of corruption that have befallen Huntsville over the years, and the deaf ears of the Huntsville Times, the rest of the power structure and criminal elements who were enjoying the stranglehold. I always trusted Joe. He always trusted me. Odd that when I was researching a biographical data sheet on Joe much, much later, there was one simple notation. Freemason. Take care, Jack. He's telling that to me, Jack is. Now, I want to try to get another one up here. Excuse me here. I hope this will go up. I did want to show this. I don't think I'm going to try to read this one and film it. But this was where Jack was when, well, I'm bouncing around. When Jack was, and this was, I don't know when this was. Anyway, this is a letter from Jack, and this was way back. Because he's talking about the Huntsville Times when he worked there. And this is a card I got, New Mexican News. That was like, I was just talking about part of it where I saw that portrait he's speaking of. It's New Mexican News. He was a reporter. He's undercover FBI. He covered Los Alamos, etc. He says here in this letter, and this is way back, and a lot of this is gone now. Like Job in the Bible, it is best sometimes not to question the fate that befalls us. For each of us there is a reason, and that reason will be clear one day. I firmly believe that, Peggy. The same is true in your situation, as difficult as it has been. Of course, I could go on and on, but this is it in the capsule. Strangely, I'm a stronger man than I was 3 years ago, adversities and all. Jack. P.S. I have a brother, well, I'll just say he's Hartsfield. And I'm not going to give anything else about that. He was a good man, too, as far as I know. That was just this part, and that's close to Georgia O'Keeffe. I was learning about my real name and everything. Now, I don't think I'm going to get much more up here, and I'm making such a mess of it. I don't know. It may not go. They may not put it up. This is Jack in 2006. I received your postcard, and I had been thinking of you, hoping you were doing well. I'm going to skip down here to this part because this was a mind control murder, and it's what? Let me read this. Much of the big picture went back far earlier than Sheriff Dave Hedrick or Bulldog Marcus Bulldog Daniel. Now I put this up on YouTube and Facebook, what the cops were doing to me after working for the Fred Simpson, the district attorney in Huntsville, Madison County. The antifreeze had been put in me April Fool Day of '80 back in Atlanta. It was horrible. Then I passed a background check, the sheriff's office, and went to work for Fred Simpson, and then that was over, and this is when they're trying to kill me again. And the cop that Jack was talking to, he says to this cop, his last name was Daniel. He said, ask her who killed your brother, who was Marcus Bulldog Daniel, because she can tell you, she knows. You know, he didn't even pay any attention to Jack. He knew Jack very well, and that Jack was a reporter. I don't know if he knew he was FBI, but he paid no attention and went on to what Sheriff Patterson told him to do. And Sheriff Patterson had done an background check on me this is in May, after the antifreeze and the hell I was in and everything, as required to work for the district attorney Fred Simpson's office. I'm just giving you a little background. Let me see. It's been an incredible journey, perhaps that I wouldn't wish on anyone, although there never was much doubt in my own mind I was traveling the road I was meant to travel. I distinctly recall your efforts at trying to phantom numerology and its links and connection you were perceiving, the 2-2. At first I did not understand, but that too would change. What happened to you seemingly was also happening to me. Not precisely the same way, but close enough. As you progressed on your own path and I tried traveling my own, you were definitely subjected to pressures and may not have understood. I didn't understand for a long time. Okay. I'm not going to be able to put much more up. You were indeed trying to pull back the curtains on some very clandestine, bizarre, and dangerous happenings in Huntsville. It wasn't pretty. So to discredit you and later me, the logic of some sinister people were simply to go to any lengths to destabilize your life, make you appear to be nuts, loony, schizophrenic, paranoid, to break you if all possible. Psychologically and emotionally. I know that feeling all too well. Believe it if you choose, or don't believe it, but the U.S. Attorney in St. Louis back then told me bluntly that at the time Huntsville and the Tennessee Valley were central distribution points for Colombian cocaine for every state east of the Mississippi River, and the mob was involved. New Orleans, Chicago, Atlanta, Miami, Huntsville, banks were laundering money. Get it? As you may recall, I was fired from my job at the Huntsville Times for being interested in some other things which I should have not been into, or something, in divorce. He lost his home. By the way, he saved my life there. I went to these same people that fired him later, and they threw my information with documents, a letter from the FBI where I'd done the book. He dumped it in the trash, the editor. Later, he and one of the others that fired Jack and did this to me threw the letters away, and the information ended up with in the hospital and almost died with heart attacks. You think they believe us now?